They didn't just kill their enemies, they made sure the whole world watched them suffer first. In ancient Rome, death wasn't always the punishment. Sometimes the real torture was being humiliated before dying. Imagine standing in a packed arena, tens of thousands cheering as your dignity is stripped away piece by piece, while the emperor smiles, sipping wine. From public whippings to forced shame parades, from noblewomen executed naked in front of crowds to soldiers punished by their own brothers, Rome turned humiliation into entertainment. But behind every cheer was fear, because in this empire, anyone could become the next show. Welcome to Crimson Curators History, where we uncover the brutal truths that history tried to hide. Today, we step into a world where pain was art and humiliation was power. Rome called itself eternal, but nothing in that city lasted longer than the urge to be seen. From the moment the first stones of the Colosseum touched the earth, the empire learned that power did not simply rule, it performed. Crowds gathered not just for justice, but for proof that their empire was still almighty. Every sentence was a show, every punishment a rehearsal in loyalty. And when the dust rose from the arena floor, it carried the whisper of a warning. In Rome, dignity could vanish in a heartbeat. This was not cruelty for pleasure, it was theater for control. In a world built on honor, humiliation spoke louder than any sword. A man's reputation was his armor. Once stripped away, he had nothing left to fight with. Rome learned to wound pride rather than flesh. It was cheaper, cleaner, and it lasted longer. From the forum steps to the palace courts, the law became a public stage where guilt and disgrace shared the same applause. The crowd didn't just watch, they memorized. They carried every downfall home like a story to retell. And so, rumor became another branch of government. For Rome's soldiers, obedience was sacred. Discipline held the empire together, and shame kept it that way. When one man faltered, his entire unit bore the blame. It wasn't enough to punish. The empire needed witnesses. Each public correction reminded the legions that loyalty was measured not by courage in battle, but by silence in judgment. In Rome, honor marched beside fear. They saluted the same flag. Justice became entertainment, and entertainment became habit. The city thrived on the spectacle, the way lungs thrive on air. Merchants sold food outside the forums where trials unfolded, blending commerce with condemnation. Children learned to mimic the gestures of judges before they learned to write. Rome didn't invent cruelty, it organized it. Every act of shame was an advertisement for order, reminding the poor and powerful alike that visibility was both privilege and punishment. High above the crowds, emperors watched the theater they had created. They smiled when the people cheered and frowned when silence fell. In that reaction lay the secret of rule, the mood of a nation measured by noise. Mercy could make a ruler seem divine. Indifference could make him eternal. Each performance tested loyalty, and each loyal cheer built another brick in the wall of power. Rome's emperors understood what every empire learns eventually. Fear fades, but spectacle never does. Every roar of approval hid smaller sounds, gasps, murmurs, uneasy laughter. Some citizens cheered because others did. Some stayed silent and prayed no one noticed. In a city that worshipped unity, doubt became a private crime. The fear of being seen not cheering was punishment enough. Rome's power wasn't in the swords of its guards, but in the voices that refused to speak. Control, the empire learned, thrives best when people police their own hearts. Statues lined every avenue, emperors, generals, gods of victory. Stone eyes watched the living, reminders that obedience could outlast flesh. To fall from favor meant more than exile. It meant erasure from the city's memory. One day, a leader's image stood in bronze. The next melted into coinage, stamped with another man's face. Rome rewrote its history in metal and marble faster than truth could keep up. In that constant rewriting, humiliation became policy disguised as art. Even private homes learned the rhythm of spectacle. Servants rehearsed obedience, families measured honor by gossip, and every courtyard echoed the empire's tone. Domestic life mirrored the public arena. Fathers judged, mothers pleaded, neighbors listened. Power trickled through dinner tables and back alleys, shaping lives long before the magistrates ever spoke. Rome didn't need to command every citizen. It simply taught them to imitate authority. And imitation became the quietest form of conquest. Among scrolls and ink, a few scholars began to see the pattern. They wrote that a state obsessed with display forgets substance, that fear cannot hold what faith has lost. Their essays spoke of moderation, of balance between justice and mercy. But reason is a whisper in the wind of applause. Copies of their works were hidden, passed hand to hand like fragile contraband. And when those scrolls reached later generations, they read not prophecy, but confession. Decades passed, yet the cheers never truly stopped. Children of the spectators grew old and brought their own grandchildren to watch. The cycle turned until no one remembered when the games had first begun. To them, spectacle was as natural as sunrise, a rhythm of identity. The empire had woven humiliation into heritage. And somewhere beneath the marble stands, Rome's heart beat, not from pride, every show had its cost, from habit. Marble cracked, soldiers aged, and the treasury bled to keep the crowds amused. Yet emperors kept paying, fearing silence more than debt. Festivals multiplied until even victories felt routine, empty echoes bouncing off tired walls. The empire had built a machine that demanded constant feeding. What once proved strength now revealed addiction. Rome could no longer stop watching itself perform. Occasionally, a ruler tried to end the games, to replace fear with forgiveness. Crowds protested, not because they loved cruelty, but because they feared change. Mercy, in a world trained for spectacle, felt like weakness. So emperors learned to perform kindness, the same way they performed wrath. Forgiveness became another scene in the play, another mask on the same stage. Rome applauded even that. Amid the thunder of the crowds lived those who never cheered. The builders, the cleaners, the nameless workers who swept the sand each night. They saw the fear, the trembling, the fragile moments between glory and ruin. Their stories were never written, but their eyes carried the memory of every show. When they prayed, they asked the gods for quiet mornings with no noise from the arena. They knew that peace, not applause, was the rarest luxury in Rome. History forgets them. Yet they were the only ones who truly saw. Time is patient. The same sun that crowned emperors slowly faded their faces. Rain slipped through tiny cracks in the stone seats, washing away names carved in pride. The people changed, the rulers changed, but the need to display power endured. Every empire imagines its monuments eternal. Every ruin proves otherwise. Marble remembers longer than men do, and even marble eventually forgets. When Rome's armies marched across continents, they carried more than weapons. They carried its culture of watching. Conquered cities built smaller arenas, mimicking the empire that had conquered them. Humiliation became a shared language spoken in many accents. Even when Rome's banners fell, its habits stayed behind. Generations later, rulers still learned from the empire's greatest invention, the spectacle of control. The stage had become the world itself. As faith spread through the empire, the taste for spectacle never disappeared. It simply changed its costume. Where the arenas once stood, new temples rose, promising salvation instead of applause. But the rhythm of public judgment remained. People still gathered to witness others tested, purified, or cast out. Rome had only traded its gods, not its habits. The empire's oldest ritual, watching, survived every conversion. Centuries later, writers tried to capture what had gone wrong. They blamed greed, decadence, barbarian armies, but many whispered that the rot began in the arena. A nation that lived by spectacle could not recognize truth without it. They wrote of a people trained to obey emotion more than reason, noise more than thought. History doesn't forget. It waits. Every age builds its own arenas. Some are made of stone, some of screens, but all promise the same comfort, watching others fall so we can feel safe. The Romans thought their world eternal, we think ours enlightened. Yet the pattern remains: outrage as entertainment, humiliation as order. What was once shouted in the Colosseum is now whispered through wires. The audience has changed seats, not roles. 2 millennia later, the Colosseum still stands, a scar and a monument. It reminds us that power survives only while people keep watching. When the audience finally looks away, the stage collapses. Every empire ends the same way, not with silence, but with the last echo of applause. Rome's story is not about cruelty. It's about the danger of forgetting our own reflection. Because in every crowd, somewhere, Rome still watches back. This was ancient Rome's theater of shame, a story of pride, fear, and the eyes that never stop watching. If you felt the weight of history tonight, remember, every age builds its own stage. Subscribe to Crimson Curators History, where the past isn't just told, it's revealed.